I am recording it right here and there. It will be, obviously they're always public record, but they will be uploaded to, for anybody that's not here or needs to re-listen to something, it'll be online. I'm gonna tell you it's gonna take a little longer because our assistant is out for probably the next week. So it will get posted as soon as she gets back in. And that one's, take it from here.
All right, and then also I will make a PDF of this PowerPoint presentation and send it to the mayor and village administration, and then they'll could probably post it to the website like they've done with other things. So as the mayor mentioned, this beginning portion of the meeting is going to be to discuss the 2022-2023 storm sewer improvements. A project by any other name would hopefully work just as sweet. It has been called the 2022, but we're not going to be able to bid this until 2023, so we might as well give it a name that's more accurate with the bidding period. So what I'm going to do is walk through this PowerPoint presentation. It's not going to be super detailed. It's more just to present the information to everybody and let you know what we started with, how we got to where we are, and what the next steps would be. It says I have 34 slides, but there's a lot of buffer slides in here, so hopefully it doesn't take that long. But as mayor and as council person Koss might say, it seems like whenever I'm at a meeting, those aren't the short meetings. So I'll try to keep this one relatively short. So here's tonight's agenda. We'll go through some introductions. We'll just do a background of the problem condition, which most of you know what it is. We'll talk about how we developed some concepts and what concepts we decided to ultimately pursue. We'll talk about preliminary alignments for the option that we're recommending the village pursue. We'll discuss some of the project challenges. This project seems like a pretty straightforward project, but it actually has a number of challenges that make delivering it a little more complicated than just a straightforward project. So I want to go through some of those a little bit just so you can see what we're facing with this project. I'll go over the next steps. Those won't be in detail, but it's mostly just giving you an idea of what we're going to do after tonight. And then I put a slide in here for question and answer. And as the mayor said, as much as you can, if you don't mind holding the questions until the end so we can get through what we need to get through. But, it's your meeting also. So, if you feel the spirit, fire away, I guess. And then we'll do a closing slide. So let's start with the introductions. The first part of this team it's the Minerva Park team. So as I listed on here, it's the Minerva Park, it's the village administration. So we have the administrative staff, we have the mayor, support staff, fiscal, financial planners, etc. Then we have the village streets committee with the council support. So council member Koss, she's the chair of the streets committee. So her committee is ultimately responsible for delivering this project. And the streets committee is ultimately responsible for bringing the recommendations forward to the total council for their action. But all of council is involved in this, and all of council is aware, and we keep all of council updated. The last bullet there under Minerva Park I put was the residents and the property owners. For a lot of you, this is a very personal project. One thing that I've always cautioned the village to, help me keep in mind is I do not live in the village. When I do my project, I go home at the end of the day. I'm not the one that lives with it. So sometimes we may make a decision that seems great, but you guys will say well, why did you stop this curb halfway through my property? I'm like, you know what? That's a very good point. Let's extend that so it looks aesthetically pleasing. So you, as the residents, that's why we want to bring you here. So you have a little bit of input, you can help us make some decisions. You're aware of what's going on so that, a few months down the road, you are not completely surprised. Jacobs. So Jacobs, we are the contracted village engineer for Minerva Park. Through various companies, whether it be Jacobs or before Jacobs, it was CH2M Hill, and before CH2M Hill, it was BBS Corporation. We've been your village engineer since 2005. I've actually been working in the village since 2005. I've outlasted, I think, every village staff member, every village council member, everybody with the dissolution, I guess, of the Minerva Park Fire Department. Chief Hochsteller was the one person that had been here before me. So I've outlasted everybody for good or bad. So my name is Mike Flickinger, and I'm the project manager for this project, and I act as the quote-unquote official village engineer. Our project engineer, the one who's been responsible for most of the design on this project, is Randall Berkeley. Randall's been doing a lot of work here in Minerva Park, so he's very experienced. He can't be here tonight. He's actually finishing up a clean water project with Ohio State University in Tanzania. So it's something he started when he was an undergrad, and I think he went there in 2015 maybe, and he's helping them he works with their capstone program. So he's finishing that up. He's supposed to be back into work on Monday, so we'll see. The third project team member is Frost Brown Todd. So if you are not aware, Frost Brown Todd is the village's contracted legal counsel. So we have a lot of interaction with legal counsel, specifically Jesse Shamp. Jesse is the primary contact for the village. Jesse and I work together very closely to keep the village legal, make sure we do things that are supposed to be done, make sure he understands what we're going to be bidding, making sure I understand any constraints that we need to build into the documents. The last team member that I put on here is additional consultants. So we as a company, we do not employ, for example, surveyors. And we're going to need more survey for this. We're going to need more survey consultant work for this project. We already have our topographic survey, so that is done. But we're going to need a lot of easements, which I'm going to get into later in this presentation. And surveyors help us prepare that easement information. So there will be another consultant involved in this project. Probably end of 2022. All right, so the background of the problem condition, which will come as no surprise to many of you. But the problem condition is the storm flow no longer is contained in the piped storm sewer system. So you will see me use these two terms here later, closed and open. So a closed storm sewer system is basically the entire thing is in a pipe. An open system is a channel or some other system that you can see, flow over the ground, flow in a channel, etc. There is, and we'll get into this later, there is a pipe that goes behind the Jordan Road properties. We will discuss in a minute why that pipe doesn't function, and we'll discuss briefly why we think this problem is happening. So hopefully it's clear up there. I just have a smaller version of it. We came over to the village the day after that massive storm event on 4th of July weekend. It was actually a pretty serendipitous massive storm event because we had just substantially completed the 2021 storm sewer project around East Shore Court. And we wanted to see how those pipes handled the storm, and the pipes handled the storm pretty darn well. But Jordan Road area, not so much. And so these pictures Randall took on his way out of the village after we looked over at the East Shore Court area. And you can see you have some standing water. The picture on the left is looking west, I believe, from the church parking lot. The picture in the middle is looking more east from the church parking lot. And then the picture on the right is just at the church parking lot. So that was just a good example. We have more pictures, and I'm sure you guys all have pictures. So, I mean, we don't have to demonstrate visually what's going on there. But this is the problem that we're trying to fix here. So we have identified what we feel are 4 contributing factors to this problem. And there's a little bit of text here, and then if you bear with me for the next slides, there'll be some pictures. I know everyone loves reading presentations. So the 4 factors that we've identified that contribute to this problem. First off, there's development on the west side of Cleveland Avenue in the Ivywood apartment area. And what we'll show is that area actually comes into Minerva Park. So that storm comes into Minerva Park. The second item, and Dick Busick is very familiar with this, there is what is commonly referred to as the WPA tile in this area. There's been some additional work that's been done in this area by the City of Columbus from Northland Plaza, and there's been some connections to the pipe, but the pipe that's there, the WPA tile, is severely restricted to the point that we can't even get a camera down it. We can't even identify exactly what's wrong with it. We just know we can't get a camera down there. So it's severely plugged. It will take approximately 3 to 4 hours for a bit of dye to go from the Yasmin Market area to the east side of Jordan Road. And that should take probably 15 minutes. So we know it's very constricted and flow can't get through there. The third item is there's a deficient sewer. It's a 15-inch diameter sewer that's between the properties of 5454 Cleveland Avenue and 5444 Cleveland Avenue. I'm going to be very specific to try to use addresses so as not to appear that I'm pointing fingers at anybody. But to give you a frame of reference where this is, 5454 Cleveland Avenue used to be the education, I forget the owners now, but it was like the Ohio Education, there was an education component to it. 5444 Cleveland Avenue is the Yasmin Market, and then the subsequent addresses associated with the shopping strip. The last bullet item there is what I'm referring to as a privately installed overflow from a drainage structure. So I will explain what that means here in a minute, but that is a contributing factor. Basically what's happened is because of the flow coming primarily from the west side of Columbus with some contributions from the west side of Cleveland Avenue, with some contributions from the east side of Cleveland Avenue from the shopping strip area, trying to get through the deficient WPA tile, which doesn't let enough flow go east, then backs up to the deficient 15-inch diameter storm sewer between 5454 and 5444 Cleveland Avenue. Someone installed an overflow because an area of their property would flood. That overflow allows everything to back up. That should go through that pipe, backs up, comes out the overflow, down your backyards. So those are the 4 contributing factors that we've identified that have caused this problem. So, as you can see, what I have here highlighted in red, all of that area is area west of Cleveland Avenue that contributes storm flow to Minerva Park.
That's a big area.
Could I add something here real quick?
Yes, please.
Those of you who were not around in the 60s and 70s, the village sued the city of Columbus to prohibit the connection and all the water that he's talking about. That's all I want to say.
And that suit, obviously, this is what we have. So the city of Columbus is aware of that history, and when we talk with them, we tread delicately. Because I believe the result of that lawsuit is that you are no longer allowed to sue them, correct? Like, I think it was...
I don't know.
That's my
We lost the lawsuit.
We lost, and my understanding is that it was a one and done. You absolutely cannot. There's documentation from our previous attorney that advised. I have been told that numerous times.
Yes, so that is our current understanding. So you can see, if you're familiar with the Ivywood Apartments,
Sorry, could you orient us and maybe point to like Gordon Foods or
sure,
something on that?
yeah, that's actually what I was getting ready to do, and I was going to try to use my pointer, but of course, you don't see my pointer. And a laser pointer doesn't work on a television screen, in case you've ever wondered. So, Cleveland Avenue is, so if you go down, you can see, if you go straight down from the N and the D in Cleveland.
Which way is north?
North is
North
up.
is north.
Okay.
North is straight up.
Big great thing
If
is
you-
Huntington.
If you come straight down from the N and the D in Cleveland Avenue, you can see there's Yasmin Market, then there's Jordan Road, and then there's GFS. GFS is directly across Cleveland Avenue from the edge of our red shading. So this area goes all the way to what's called Aqua Street, and it encompasses all of the Ivywood Apartments and then some of this development farther west of the apartments. They have a detention basin that does control some of that flow, but that flow still all comes to the village. The problem that we've had with that detention basin is there are no good calculations for that detention basin. The city of Columbus doesn't appear to have them. The engineering firm that designed it is no longer in business, if I remember correctly. So we had to make some hard assumptions and basically assume it's all coming to us at one time without being detained and released at a smaller flow rate. You get the flow eventually. It might not come to us as fast as we actually modeled it, but we had to be liberal in our modeling so that we didn't undersize the system. All right, so here's the WPA tile behind the properties on north side of Jordan Road. So again, north is to the top of the screen. That's the Northland Plaza. To the far left of the screen, barely cut off on the lower portion of the picture, but as on the diagonal, that's Cleveland Avenue. The largest white rectangle just off to the left of just from the left side of the picture, that's the Yasmin International Market. Jordan Road is at the bottom of the screen, kind of going on a diagonal. So this sewer is a sewer that there used to just be basically what people commonly refer to as a field tile. People don't really necessarily use that terminology anymore, but it's just a field tile. It's just an 18-inch diameter pipe that people installed back in the day to just get drainage off their property. When Northland Plaza was built, they installed a storm sewer system, and part of that storm sewer system whacked out part of the 18-inch diameter field tile that went to the northeast on this screen and tied it into the drainage system. So in theory, what should happen is this sewer behind Jordan Road should tie into that drainage system coming out of Northland Plaza. But as we've mentioned, this pipe is deficient in some way. We don't know exactly how, but deficient to the point that flow can't make it through.
Can you go back to that real quick? Is it the blue line that is the pipe?
I believe so.
The blue is, I'm sorry?
Is that the pipe?
What's the pipe?
The pipe is the combination of the green, and the blue. So the green, the darkish green, so part of the problem with this color is this is a composite that we've had to build from multiple sources. That blue pipe is where we think the pipe is, because there are no drawings on
It's
it.
just a little inconsistent with what I see in my yard.
The green pipe to the left of it is pipe that we've actually been able to trace,
Yeah.
but nobody knows where it goes. So where the green pipe stops and meets the blue pipe, that's where our contractor's beacon stopped moving. So we can't get past it. So the blue is pieced together from City of Columbus records and old drawings. So no one knows if that's accurate. That's just how everybody thinks it is. The intent is it won't be like that when we're done. So
Right.
the next item here, again, is the 15-inch sewer between 5454 Cleveland Avenue and 5444 Cleveland Avenue. So 5454 Cleveland Avenue is the smaller rectangle, the gray. Sorry if you're colorblind. The gray. The structure right below it that's cut off, that's 5444 Cleveland Avenue. So there's a sewer that runs between those two properties. And the reason I did this one versus the other aerial photos is because this one I could just focus on the pipe, which is a little better. That pipe, we know, is deficient approximately 75 feet east of what we call manhole 204. So if you look at my cloud, the first circle that's on the right, that's storm 204. 75 feet east of that, we know that line is deficient, meaning it's crushed. Water cannot get through there. It's completely blocked. That is probably the biggest contributing factor to this next thing, which is the unplanned overflow. So this is the privately installed overflow from the drainage structure near the northeast corner of 5454 Cleveland Avenue. I will tell you right now, please do not ask me, because I truthfully do not know who installed it. That is not a lie, that is not an exaggeration. I do not know who installed it.
We can
And
guess.
that is what I will say. So what has happened is the property at 5454 Cleveland Avenue, you can see there's the green sewer that's going to the south now. That actually is sewer that's supposed to be collecting the roof drainage from the shopping strip. Now those downspouts, if I'm not mistaken, have actually been disconnected. They don't connect into the storm sewer system. They actually discharge into the alley behind. I have my thoughts on perhaps why that happened. But again, I truthfully can tell you I do not know why that happened. Because of this problem, somebody installed this overflow. What was happening is water would hit basically that 75-foot blockade, 75 feet from the manhole, back up through the system, and the primary outlet was the parking lot in front of the shopping strip. And it was getting severely flooded, like a foot plus of water.
Does anybody remember that?
Yes, yes, we
I have
saw.
pictures of ducks floating in it.
So
It's a water feature.
during, it must be stated that when the shopping strip was platted and when it was designed, their design documents did allow for the parking lot to be part of their drainage system. Probably not to the extent of a foot plus of water, but I mean, you've all been in parking lots enough after a hard rain to see that some of them actually do kind of act as a little bit of a detention basin. That's not uncommon. So just because water might have backed up into a parking lot doesn't mean that the whole thing was dysfunctional, but they probably had what you would consider to be an excessive amount of it. Someone then installed this overflow. So what is happening is that's the earliest point now at which water can relieve itself. So instead of backing up into the parking lots, it actually backs up into the sewer and goes out the overflow. And now it's discharging surface and going through your backyards.
Are you saying that the green pipe between the buildings is basically the part of, it connects to the WPA tile?
Yes.
So the WPA tile basically is not carrying the water that comes from the west side of Cleveland Avenue, if that is blocked. Is that true?
Yes.
My goodness, that's awful.
Yes.
Okay.
Well said, sir. Yes, may I say something?
Yes.
My husband and my brother and I used to own the property where that shopping center was. And my brother had them build a retention pipe underneath it and around it. And the hole was actually cut in the retention pipe. I have pictures of it, flooded out into my backyard. I live right here.
It was done on a Sunday.
Oh, this Sunday. Well, I do have.
My property used to be
The-
the, had to know where it was at.
Interesting things tend to happen on that day.
Yeah. I do have one question, just kind of like when we're all done with all this, will my basement toilet still potentially overflow
You're too
With-
far away, I think.
with street water?
That should actually never happen.
Well, I've been there 20,
I'm not saying it doesn't,
it does.
but that should never happen because that means that somehow your sanitary system is either connected to the storm sewer system or the storm sewer system is connected to your sanitary system. So what I would ask is after this meeting, if you could give me your street address and we will look into it. I will talk to the mayor to look into that because these are two completely separate systems and they should never,
So you're not aware of anywhere where it is joined together?
no.
Okay.
But we know where
Will that
the
come
storm
up?
sewers are now, right?
Wouldn't that come up on the CCTVs that we've done in that area?
Yeah, we have no documentation from the storms or from the sanitary sewer CCTV work that we've done up there, but we haven't actually done our storm sewer CCTV work up there.
Okay. So maybe and we can have them look a little extra since that's what's on legislation. We can talk about that at the very end, because that's the legislation we're gonna talk about at the very end. Just so you know.
That should not happen, even if this problem exists, that shouldn't happen anyway.
Right.
So,
I think you're
Yeah.
too far away.
there's another conversation that needs to be had about your property.
Now, the WPA tile, when it goes down Jordan Road, back the north side of Jordan, does not have any inlets except for one that I know of, which was at what used to be Tom Newberger's house. There's a grate back there, and that's the only entrance that I am aware of to that tile.
Sammy's house,
Which address is that you're referring to?
Sammy's house, the one with
house.
Well, I know that there's one behind 2716 to Johnston's, which is next door to me.
Okay, so there
Yeah.
may be two, but it's not
It's
collecting.
clogged, it's covered up with stuff, but
Yeah.
I know there's a grate there.
All right, so now that we know the problem and we know what's contributing to it, the next step we took was, all right, let's start working on coming up with alternatives. So I'll step you through what we did from concept development. So the first thing we had to do was develop a hydraulic model of the storm sewer system. So what I'm showing you here is the extent of the western contribution is actually cut off from this, in this image. But everything you see in green is in our model. Now, it might not all necessarily contribute to Minerva Park, but the vast majority of this does contribute to Minerva Park. The portion of the sewers that don't contribute to Minerva Park, are those sewers that are above this blue line, which just, please, the blue line doesn't mean anything in the context of our conversation. It was a pipe that we were talking about at one point. It's just the best picture I could grab out of all of our sources. But so we modeled everything. We modeled the Huntington drainage. We modeled the
I'm sorry, can you orient us again, please?
north is to the top.
Well, no,
which is.
And then-
building layout, just, can somebody point to where?
Here, Yasmin, thank you.
No, Yasmin's to the right there.
Here, hold on.
What if it's north-south, that can't be.
The U shape is north and plaza.
So here's Northland Plaza.
Yeah.
Here's Yasmin.
Okay.
Here's GFS.
And Huntington.
Here's Ivywood Apartments. This is Huntington. This is that other, I literally don't know what that guy
Landry.
is. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So we had to model this whole system to see what contributed, what went elsewhere, because there's actually two sewers that cross Cleveland Avenue in relatively close proximity. The southern one is what brings everything into Minerva Park. The northern one actually ties into the Northland Plaza. So the Northland Plaza drainage system actually gets all the Huntington drainage, and it gets drainage from Northland Plaza itself, which, I mean, you guys know that there's a lot of surface area there. So, I mean, there's a lot coming in there, and it gets all the Huntington drainage. Huntington, and then the transfer, I forget what it's technically called, but the Dakota transfer area didn't reduce that a whole lot. I mean, stores like Meijer, Walmart, they're big storm contributors. So the little bit of work that Huntington did and Dakota did, it didn't reduce that significantly. So that's still a pretty massive contributor. But thankfully, it actually doesn't come into Minerva Park. So the first thing we did, do our storm modeling, figure out what flow rate are we actually trying to get through this entire system. So after we did that, we said, what's possible, what's practicable? So we came up, I listed 9 here. You get engineers on a MS Teams call. You come up with some crazy stuff. This is the 9 best, that sounded the most practicable. So I mean, we looked at a lot of different concepts that we could apply to Minerva Park. I don't want to go into all the details on these because it's not really to anyone's benefit, I don't think. But I will tell you, I mean, some of them were pretty, like this guy here. Well, again, you can't see my point. Rectangular, the open system over the entire length, rectangular shape with vertical retaining walls. I mean, that's basically just building a rectangular channel. all the way down the backyards with, vertical retaining walls of some kind, concrete, block, whatever, walking path, and all sorts of stuff. But when you start building, 3,000 feet times 2 of 9-foot tall concrete walls, the prices just went out of control very quickly. We talked about all these things. What we settled on were 2. So we took what concepts merited further development, and we came up with 2 that we felt were worth pursuing. So the first one is a closed pipe system over the entire length, flowing by gravity. Okay, rather than, we did talk about the easiest way to minimize the pipe size for the village is to put in a pump station. Pump station and a wet well. Village is going to have to maintain a pump station. They don't have the staff to maintain a pump station. You don't want to pay to maintain a pump station.
Well, given our problems with Baghdad Electric, I'd be afraid that the pump wouldn't work. When the power goes out, we'd be right back where we started.
Well, if we put in a pump station, it'd have to have non-powered backup power. So it'd have a diesel generator, which is another thing that has to be maintained, another thing that has to be cycled, filled. It just adds up very quickly. And
A lot.
pump stations in residential settings are a challenge. Basically what would have likely happened is you'd see a fake house, maybe, that was just a pump station. That's not uncommon. So that just wasn't in the village's best interest to pursue that any further. So we looked at 2. So the first one I mentioned was the closed pipe system over the entire length, gravity flow. Basically, put in pipes, put in manholes, just let it work. It's gravity, don't have to do anything. The second item second concept that we looked at is a combination closed and open system. So open again as a channel, closed as a pipe. This is basically similar to a French drain. So the concept here is you'd have a pipe that is sized to carry the majority of the flow, but in higher storm events, we'd have reliefs in the system, manholes, water can flow out of the manhole and into a channel, and then flow down the channel.
Where does the channel go?
We'll get to that. Yep. So it's kind of like the French drain around your house. Similar concept. The pipe is perforated. Water can seep into it. The main advantage there is, and I'll get into it here on the next slide, it let us significantly reduce the pipe size, which significantly reduced the cost of the project. So let's look at the 2 concepts that we discussed. So this is just a summary of what we discussed, or what we considered. So option number 1, the closed pipe system. So you can see out here I have roughly 2,900 feet of 36-inch diameter pipe with manholes. So to put that in context, a 36-inch diameter storm sewer pipe is pretty big. It's a 3-foot diameter pipe. So what's there now is a 15-inch diameter pipe. I forgot to do the math, but a 36-inch isn't 36 inches divided by 15 times bigger. It's the squares of the radii. So it's almost like 4 times bigger. So a 36-inch diameter storm sewer is pretty big. It takes up a lot of space. It requires a lot of excavation. It requires a lot of backfill. The limits of this pipe would basically go from 54 Cleveland Avenue all the way down to the new pipe that we installed as part of the 2021 storm sewer project. So
Where is that?
so that's what I was just getting into. So to give you guys, that is behind the properties on East Shore Court.
And Park Lane Drive.
So it's if anyone happens to know where Don Root lives, it's his backyard. So basically what we would do is come back in and connect to a project that we just finished. So all that work that we had just done to fix your backyard, we would tear it back up and regrade it.
You weren't expecting that, were you?
Why would you have to dig it back up?
To connect the pipe.
Because the pipe isn't big enough there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But the new pipe that's been put in, that one,
Yeah, so that's if we were going to do option number 1. And the reason, well, I'll get into it here. It would all be installed via open cut. That means digging up a 9-foot deep plus trench. That's 3 feet plus probably 2 feet on each side. Plus has to be benched back because it's 9 feet deep, or they put in trench boxes. So basically you're looking at like a 12-foot wide, 9-foot deep trench all the way from Cleveland Avenue to basically Park Lane Drive.
In our backyard.
In your backyards while we do this work. The opinion of the probable construction cost, we're going to get into this technicality here later in the slide, as of July 2022 was basically $1.1 million to do that work. That's based on a class 4 estimate, which has a range of minus 30% to plus 50%.
What does that mean?
So it means basically $1.1 million is in the middle. So subtract 30%, add 50%, and that's the range. That is a very commonly accepted range at this phase of the project. We do our cost estimates per this. There's a very specific standard by the Advancement Association for the Advancement of Construction Estimating, I think is what it's called, AACE. They promulgate a standard to do this. We did what's called a class 4 estimate, which is what you do at this stage of a design. The second option is this combination closed and open system. So this one has roughly half the length of the pipe. Now the reason it has half the length of the pipe is because if we were going to install new pipe, we needed to install it all the way. Because we couldn't take our 36-inch diameter pipe and tie it into a 20-inch diameter or 24-inch diameter pipe. That would just cause problems because that system couldn't handle what we were bringing to it. So we would have to take it all the way. With this system, because we're allowing some relief, we're keeping the same size pipe coming all the way down behind Jordan Road, and then it's tying into a larger diameter pipe, which is how it should. So the larger diameter pipe downstream no longer is the choke point. Our system is the constraining factor. But because we put in the channels as the relief, if there's a constraint somehow, if we get a significant flow, there's an opportunity for it to come out of the pipe and stay in the channel. So we don't have to take this pipe all the way down. Now, the exact termination point, you can see I said the limits are from 5454 Cleveland Avenue to one of 2 locations determined during detailed design. There's that pipe that I mentioned earlier that's coming out of Northland Plaza. What we are trying to determine is what's the best place to tie our system into. Because there's a tricky factor with this project that I'll get into in a later slide, which is basically this whole system comes from from Columbus into Minerva Park, back into Columbus, back into Minerva Park. So we have to be very careful about where we tie into, so that if we have to tie in on the Columbus side, then we have to get Columbus involved. If we have to tie in on Northland Plaza's property, then we have to get Northland Plaza involved. Luckily, they have thus far, very responsive owners, which is a challenge. Anytime you deal with a business, you're lucky if the owner's local. These owners are local, and I didn't have an email address for them. I sent them an actual letter and got a response back within a week. So they seem very willing to cooperate. So, but anything we do, there's all these different parties that we have to mingle with. So we're trying to decide what's best for the project, what's best for the village, what's best for the system itself. So that's a detailed design. It doesn't affect our cost estimate significantly because, as you can see, it's again same, minus 30 to plus 50% range. I want to go up one level though. So I'm talking about putting a channel in your backyards. How big is this channel? What does it look like? It's actually pretty small. What we're showing, what we've thus far calculated, is it's a trapezoidal shaped channel. So that's usually the most efficient cross section for a channel. It's easiest to build, it's easiest to maintain, and it's good for flow. So we're looking at a channel that is at its base 2 feet wide, and at its depth 1 foot 3 inches, maybe in there roughly. And then when you actually do the math and you stretch it out, from the top of the bank to the top of the bank, it's going to be about 12 feet wide. But it's a small channel. The opinion of probable construction costs for this project, $550,000. So you can see it's half the price, right? So there's a lot of appeal to this. One of the price is a huge driver, and we'll get into that later. Pipe availability is an extreme challenge right now. The 36-inch diameter pipe would most likely have to be reinforced concrete pipe. That's the City of Columbus standards. That's the standards that Minerva Park has to follow. RCP pipe is expensive, and it's tough to get right now. So, you know, an 18-inch diameter perforated pipe that's locally made is a lot easier to get right now than the RCP pipe. RCP. It's like PIN number. RCP. As village administration can attest, the 2021 storm sewer project, we bid that project around Labor Day 2021. We weren't able to start. We actually didn't get pipe on site until May 15th. So, and that's good, actually, right now. Okay, so through conversations with the village, the intent is to proceed with option number 2, which is the combination of the closed and open system. So what I have on this screen here is, it's exaggerated, but it's an example of how this system would be built and how we would intend for it to work. So as I mentioned earlier, it's similar to a French drain concept. So what we have is an 18-inch diameter perforated pipe. That pipe is connected to all the manholes, and normal flow will just flow through that pipe. You'll never see it for the typical storms that you get. It stays in the pipe. Any rain that can penetrate the ground eventually will filter its way down into the pipe. It'll go through the ground, it'll go through the filtration zone, the stone, and it'll work into the pipe. If we experience a storm event that exceeds, in the short term, the capacity of the 18-inch diameter pipe, it'll spill out of a drainage structure. Not sure exactly, we haven't gotten into the details of what type of structure we're going to use for that. If you are out and about in non-curb and gutter areas, you might often see catch basins that are actually above the ground. And so they have a ditch running to them, but the grate is actually higher than the base of the trench. It's called a daylight structure. And so what that means is they wanted to have the flow not come in through the grate, but they needed a little extra height. We will probably do something similar here, where we'll have structures that will have little overflows. Now the trick is we haven't determined how many of those we're going to have. Like if we're going to do it at every manhole so that water in the trench could maybe get back into the sewer halfway down, or is it another place for a storm to relieve itself if the pipe gets full? So rather than having to go all the way back up Cleveland Avenue and pops out of the westernmost manhole, maybe it pops out at the first manhole. Those are details we're trying to work through. We haven't proceeded with detailed design. There will probably be roughly 1,400. There'll be 5 or 6 probably drainage structures along this. The spacing is generally 300 feet to 400 feet. It just depends on the alignment that we choose. Okay, so we've put together 3 preliminary alignments. And so again, apologies if you're colorblind, but I'm going to refer to them as 1, 2, and 3, red, orange, and blue. So the 4 colors that you see on the screen, green, red, orange, and blue. So I'm not going to really discuss green very much because green is common to all three alignments. It's basically what we need to do to get from Cleveland Avenue over past the church property. There's not a lot of variety over there. It's a straight shot. So that's just going to be, we don't really need to discuss that too much, other than we're going to basically follow the property line more or less. Okay, so it will be tucked up as far north as we can get it in the property, pending tweaking. But for the most part, that's consistent across all three alignments.
What colors are open and what are closed?
They're all the same,
Okay.
open and closed. We did not do any alignments of this. This is only for the recommended alternative, which is the combination.
Is green closed pipe?
Green is a combination of closed pipe and channel. They're all the same. It's closed pipe and channel from start to finish.
What does it end in?
It would end in a drainage structure, a manhole, a catch basin.
Well, there's already the
Existing.
Mosquito Bay back there, the Columbus catch basin that's there now. But where it ends is sort of,
Well, we cannot tie into that.
yeah, okay, because it's Columbus.
Well, that, but also, they need its capacity when we need its capacity. It's not sized to carry your flow.
Okay,
That was actually the first thing we looked at. Could we just
tie in. I'm not
skip,
even sure it's
skip this whole,
functioning right
it functions.
now. Does it?
Yeah, because we've seen the water coming out of the pipe behind Don Root's house. So, the first thing we looked at was just skipping this whole thing, and could we just divert flow up into the Northland Plaza's sewer system?
Yeah.
And talk to them and see, could we do that? But that catch base, that detention basin is sized for their flow. And it rains there when it rains here. So they need that capacity when we need that capacity, so we can't tie into it.
One question, so could you make that bigger?
We looked at it. There isn't room to make it big enough.
The detention basin, just so I know, it's kind of that red
It's-
dotted dog bone shape?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we looked at it. We just unfortunately can't make it big enough.
Does not the Northland catch basin tie into the WPA tile?
No. It ties in east of it.
Where does
Okay.
where does the water from that go?
Into the Minerva Park system.
Okay,
In our lake.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It goes behind Don Root's house.
Can we let him finish going through like the
Okay.
different colors and all that stuff, and then let's ask all the questions, so, because I don't think we've gotten past the green yet.
So the first alignment number 1, call it the red alignment. So as you can see, it pretty much hugs the northern property lines as much as possible. And I do just want to point out the termination points on the east of this super thick, let's draw it in PDF software. It's not exact. It's generally where it's going to end. This alignment runs pretty much, like I said, along the northern boundary of the Jordan Road properties. I put a few bullet points off to the right-hand side. It's the most direct route. I mean, it is easiest, the most direct route. There is a conflict with one shed on the Bell parcel. I don't know if. All right. So there are 2 sheds on the Bell parcel. This would, as currently shown, go through the northern shed. I think we've had some preliminary conversation about that, and we're going to get into some specifics here about property owners here on a later slide. It also removes the most trees. And that's, I'm going to leave it at that.
That's a deer path too, so I would worry about that.
It is a deer path. In fact, I think we saw them when we were out walking. It also requires the most grading. And by that I mean that has the most slope, like we're cutting into more slope than other alignments. So this has a lot more earthwork.
It's the easement though, it's more of the easement property instead of our yard.
We're going to get into that because there are no easements. So it's like you guys read my presentation. Alignment number 2 is the orange alignment. So this one comes a little farther south. It follows the existing grade better than alignment 1. So it utilizes, rather than cutting into those steeper slopes that are along the back sides of the property, it's in the shallower parts of the yard. So you don't have to do as much earthwork. It does get a little steep at the west end. So we kind of have like a, how do I want to describe it? Because we're not cutting in as much at the top, we actually have to do a quicker dive down to get into the lower property. This does conflict with both sheds on the Bell property, which is a conversation. It does remove the fewest trees. But one other drawback is it moves the easements deeper, so more south, into the properties. So the conversation that we would have if this were the selected alignment is what type of easement is the parcel owner willing to grant to the village? Do you want to do the easiest, which is X number of feet off your property line, and all of a sudden the easement could be 60 feet? Or do you want it to follow the alignment and it's X number of feet and it follows this? So that's a conversation that we'll have with each property owner. Alignment number 3 is it's kind of a hybrid of the two. It does follow the grade better than alignment number 1 because it's very similar to the alignment number 2. It once again conflicts with 2 sheds on the Bell parcel. What this also does, and I apologize, I kind of know names of at least who owns property. It might not be who lives there, so I kind of have seen some names. I can't tell you the exact people that would be affected by this, but those of you who have those very nice, large diameter trees that are probably like 50 feet to 80 feet off your property line, this goes right through those. Again, I'm not saying this is my favorite. We're trying to present all the options that we can. So this removes large diameter trees. Alignment number 1 moves a lot of trees that are kind of scrubby. They provide good buffer. I will say that. A lot of the trees back there provide a lot of good buffer between your northern neighbor and your property. But they're not these massive, your property, we're talking like 3-foot diameter trees probably. There's some pretty massive trees. So that's one of the cons of this alignment. And then similar to the alignment before this, the easements are deeper into the parcels. Okay. So I will tell you that as of 6:59 p.m. on August 17th, we have not recommended an alignment to the village. We have not put forth what we think is the best alignment to the village. Alignment number 1 is pretty easy. From just an ease perspective, there's not a lot to do there. That doesn't mean it's the best one. So part of what we're trying to do with this presentation is to make you all aware of things that we're discussing. And this is kind of the general presentation. And I'll show you, you'll see in the next steps, what we want to do is then, as we start refining our design, we want to talk to individual property owners, or we want to talk to property owners individually, not in the big setting. We want to talk to you individually so we can say, hey, here's what's going on your property. What are some of the challenges you see? What are some of the things we need to build back into the project, whether it be a betterment or whether it be a restoration? So for example, if there are going to be some fences that probably get wiped out, and we're going to have to put them back. Because there's a lot of fences in this alignment. There's structures in this alignment. There are trees in this alignment. So what we want to do is once we in the village decide on the alignment, and then we talk to you guys with your input, then we talk to you specifically and say, okay, here's what's going to happen on your property. You might lose this tree, this tree, this tree. Here's what we're going to do to put it back. Now, and I'm going to say this not because Don is here, but partially because Don is here. We had some of these very preliminary conversations for the 2021 project, but they were years ago. One of the parcels in that project is on its third owner through the history of the project. And so some of this information didn't necessarily get conveyed. And there were some miscommunications between us, the contractor, what we put forth to the residents. It doesn't help Don on this project, but we know that we want to be as forthcoming and mindful and proactive as we can. So, we're trying to get you guys this part today and then bring you in again to make sure that you understand what's going to happen on your property, make sure the documents accurately reflect what everyone understands, make sure easement wording accurately reflects what's going to happen. So I'll get to that slide later, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up that that's what's coming. So again, we have not recommended an alignment. So project challenges. I mentioned earlier that this project has a lot of challenges for what seems like a pretty straightforward project. And I'm going to go into each of these in a little more in depth, but basically we're looking at funding challenges, construction costs, coordination, storm sewer ownership. There'll be a lot of oh my goodnesses on that one probably. Lack of existing easements in the area, minimizing impacts to properties, and everybody's favorite in Central Ohio, potential need for a bat survey. So, project funding. So as I mentioned earlier, the opinion of probable construction costs for the recommended concept is $550,000 as of July 2022. We didn't update it since then. Prices are all over the place. And you could update your cost estimate every day. One of the biggest challenges we face in construction currently is fuel. Every piece of equipment out there runs on diesel. And when diesel prices were at $6 per gallon, we had a lot of contractors that were coming to us and be like, look, we could not have envisioned this. Like, we need some relief. So the village is working with a grant writer to investigate applicable and available funding sources. So the village has resources, financial resources that they can put into this project. But I don't think it's unfair to say that the storm sewer maintenance fund is not sitting on $550,000 right now. It had something like that at one point, but we just finished the 2021 project. So that was a self-funded project. The village did not pursue any grants for that. So the mayor, there's a grant writer that the village has worked with previously, very successfully, I want to add. That grant writer has helped the village get multiple zero interest loans. It's tough to get full grants, but 0% interest loans are almost as good. You come out ahead financially over the funding. And in fact, Ben, the grant writer, the first grant proposal that he did for the village had the highest score in that funding application. Until then, the village had always been kicked over to small government, meaning they didn't even make the cut the first round, and they go to the small government where you kind of get the scraps. Minerva Park had the highest scoring proposal in that one. So we got money before anybody else. So Ben has done a really good job for the village, and he will be looking at what type of funding is there. We've often used OPWC money in the village, but there's other funding sources that Ben is going to look at. The next challenge, construction costs. As I mentioned, you can see on that first bullet point, we've seen costs change in construction 30% to 50% in 2 years, depending on the project, depending on the materials. So if you have a lot of plastics on your job, plastics made with what? Fuel. Those prices have skyrocketed. Concrete, all the equipment that's required to make the concrete, putting in the steel, manufacturing the steel, All this stuff has just skyrocketed in price. I mean, it's not limited to construction, obviously. I mean, you guys have seen the grocery stores. But if you read what is causing it, this could be a whole nother public meeting. I put a couple things in there. Labor shortages. Contractors are having trouble finding labor. Material shortages. We just can't get stuff on time. Wage increases. I mean, salaries have increased. Contractors are having to increase salaries to compete. Material cost escalation. So I just had a recent project where a manufacturer increased his price. It went up 10% each month over a 3-month period. So it's very challenging to keep it under control. Fuel prices, I mean, you guys have all seen what's happening with fuel prices. Everybody's favorite, everybody puts it in quotes because they don't want to, it's being very gentle, instability in Europe. That's causing problems in supply chains. And then contractors are just being more selective. It's like we don't have enough resources to bid as much work as we want. And so we have to be very selective about what work we're going to bid. So you're finding fewer contractors willing to actually even bid on certain projects. Now, this is going to become, most people believe, this is going to become a significant problem in Central Ohio because someone is investing a $20 billion factory in Central Ohio that's going to suck up a lot of labor and a lot of contractors. We've already talked to some contractors who are sort of hedging their bets, not bidding as much work now so they have the bonding capacity and the staff capacity to bid work later for that project. So it's a challenge. Multiple municipalities and property owners. So as I mentioned briefly earlier, you can kind of see with this red flow path. When the system is working how it's intended to work, flow comes from the west side of Cleveland Avenue. So it comes from Columbus, goes up Cleveland Avenue, goes under Cleveland Avenue into Minerva Park, runs east of Minerva Park, and then leaves Minerva Park for a sliver and ties into the Columbus system again. Gets flow from Northland Plaza, and then it turns south back into Minerva Park, goes back behind the East Shore Court properties, and ties into the North Lake. So you can see it's Columbus, Minerva Park, Columbus, Minerva Park. And not only is it Columbus, but it's Northland Plaza. So they have a system that's technically their own, but also tied into Columbus. So if we may have to coordinate with 2 other parties to get this project to work. It's not a challenge that can't be overcome, it's just a challenge. Yeah. Okay. Ownership of the storm sewers near 5454 Cleveland Avenue. Do you remember when I mentioned earlier the deficient 15-inch? That's a bad omen. The deficient 15-inch sewer between 5454 and 5444 Cleveland Avenue. The village doesn't even own that sewer. That village is privately owned. That sewer is privately owned. It's legal counsel's interpretation that sewer is privately owned. So it is technically owned by the owners of 5454 Cleveland Avenue. So in its current state, the village can't even do anything to that sewer. We don't even have an easement to do anything. We don't even have the right, technically, to fix it. The village, legal counsel, planning director, we're actually working, we've been communicating with the owner of 5454 Cleveland Avenue, and the intent is for that owner to convey that sewer to the village, so then it becomes the village's sewer. They will own it, they will maintain it, then we'll have the ability to go in and maintain it. And then grant us an easement to access it and maintain it.
Doesn't that owner live in Minerva Park down the street?
That owner of 5454 Cleveland Avenue, I do not know.
Yasmin, right?
No. It's the property just to the north of it.
The gray building, the gray.
So the Yasmin International Market shopping strip has an easement to tie into it. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So we're working with that owner, because if we can pull that into the village's system, it will just make everything go faster. It'll be easy. I mentioned this earlier when you asked this question about the easements. As of now, I do not think, based on the survey data that we have, there are any easements on the Jordan Road properties along the northern property lines. So right now, everything we have to do back there, we first will have to come to you and get an easement. And I have a slide about that. Actually, we can just talk about it right here. I thought this was later, my apologies. Basically, what we would have to do is we'd settle the alignment, and then we would come to each property owner and say, okay, here's the alignment. So then what we have to do is agree what width of easement you want to grant, whether it's granting it from all the way from the property line or whether it follows the alignment. Then we prepare an easement document. So a surveyor would prepare the document that describes it, like the actual bearings, the direction, the area, the acreage. Then we combine that with easement text that legal counsel provides. Then we take that back to the property owner. You guys execute the easement. The village executes the easement. Then legal counsel takes that easement and then records it with the county recorder. And then that easement is permanent. There's a possibility that we could require temporary easements also. So sometimes we get temporary easements, which means we need to do some work outside the permanent easement. We just need some extra room, whether it be for material storage or whatever. We'll determine if temporary easements are required. It might be beneficial to have a permanent easement that's narrower. Well, I will say this, it's always easier to have as much easement space as you can get from the owner's perspective. The resident perspective, the parcel owner's perspective might not like that. So you might want a narrower easement that more follows the actual alignment, but we may need more space during construction. So in that instance, what we would do is we would prepare what's called a temporary easement, which describes the area of your property in which we're allowed to work. That also gets a description, a sketch, it gets recorded, and then at the end of the project, we then terminate that temporary easement and it goes away. So we will have to work through that, and that's partly why we want to meet with each resident individually, each property owner, I should say, individually to get that sorted out. Minimizing impacts to properties. So depending on the alignment that we ultimately pursue, this sewer touches up to 14 parcels. I mean, it goes through a lot. It goes through a lot of different places. That's a lot of coordination. But what it also is, it's a lot of impact. I mean, if you saw what the East Shore Court properties looked like in February versus what they look like now, they're markedly different. We had to do a tree removal, clearing, grubbing. So this project, there could be tree removal, clearing and grubbing. Clearing and grubbing is basically just clearing up the scrub. It's like basically if it's measurable, if it's above a certain diameter, it's a tree removal. If it's less than that, they consider it clearing and grubbing. It's also just getting rid of some scrub areas if there's overgrowth. There could be structure removal, whether it be a shed, whether it be fences. There will be regrading on these properties. So there's a lot of impact, potential impact to these properties. And I'm just going to put it out there. The last bullet point, it's just unfortunate. Some will be affected more than others. It's just the nature of the project. If you have an area that has a wide open, if our alignment goes through your parcel and it's in a wide open space that barely needs any grading and there aren't any trees and there's no fence and there's no shed, you barely see, much of a difference post-construction to pre-construction. If we have to go through an area of your property that has a lot of trees, a lot of those trees are going to have to go. So some places are going to be affected more than others. It's the unfortunate nature of construction. I wish that weren't the case, but it is. So I'm just throwing that out there for everyone to digest on. The last challenge I want to discuss is the potential need for a bat survey. So, the Ohio Division of Wildlife and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, they have requirements for disturbances near potential or known bat hibernation areas. I believe you pronounce it hibernacula. It's basically caves, cliffs, mines, or tree cutting. So the 4 bat species that Ohio is most concerned about, the one that has apparently the best lobbying is the Indiana bat. That's the one that everyone knows about the most, I think, the Indiana bat. But not to be outdone, there's the northern long-eared bat, the tricolored bat, and the little brown bat. So what a bat survey is basically if it's suspected that there's a bat habitat where you're doing construction, you have to do a bat survey to confirm whether or not bats are around. The problem with doing a bat survey is in Ohio, the survey field season is only June 1st through August 15th. Unless you get a waiver in like a specific, like emergency survey that you can do. So we obviously did not get our bat survey this year because no one was we didn't even have the alignments generally configured. We weren't even sure if this was going to go forward this year. One of the things that you can do, and this is what we were able to do on the East Shore Court project, if you're removing fewer than 20 trees, a bat survey is generally not required as long as you do your tree removal between October 1st and March 31st. So on the East Shore Court project, that's why we cleared the trees. We weren't expecting the second delay in the pipe manufacturing. That was unlucky. They had basically a fire at their factory. But that's why we did the tree clearing in February, so that we were done before March 31st, so we could clear the trees without the bat survey. I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen on this project. I've already been in communications with Division of Wildlife from Ohio and gotten some guidance about some things that we need to look into. So depending on our alignment, that June 1st to August 15th could be a constraint. You know, I mean, if we're required to do a bat survey and we can't get the kind of out of season expedited bat survey, you know, we may have to push bidding back a little bit to do our bat survey to then determine if we can cut on the day we want to, or if we have to wait until, you know, after the clearing period.
What happens if they find the bats?
If they find the bats, then you're limited to cutting only between October 1st and March 31st. So you can still clear it. What happens is bats apparently have a calendar in between April 1st and September 30th. That's the period where they're most active. So apparently they all leave. On October 1st, it's a free-for-all. But that's the general cutting down period. I think that's primary. I am many things I am not, and one of them is definitely not a bat expert. I believe that's kind of their active period and their mating period, and by that point, I think the young bats are able to take care of themselves and fly.
Why don't we just schedule all of our tree removals during that period, because there are bats back there. There are bats.
Yeah, bats.
Well,
We have bats. We know we have bats.
yeah, but it's not any bat. It's only these 4 specific
Only those,
bats.
so
I think we have those
Certain
brown bats.
So if it's a little brown bat, then
I do not know what kind of bats they are.
yeah, and what I have
I'll work on that.
and what I have learned from my trips to the zoo is even though the bat is little and even though it is brown, it's not necessarily a little brown bat. So
Maybe a big brown.
yeah, so that's just a constraint around which we'll have to work, whether it be, in actuality, it could become moot, just because of whenever, when funding becomes available or whatever, I mean, what we would like to do is we would like to bid this project spring 2023, but we'll see. So
So there was one thing that you touched on earlier that I didn't quite grasp. You talked about, you had the 3 different configurations, and you had end lines, and you said they weren't exact.
Mhm.
What's the end of the line? Is that where you're cutting into the existing?
That's where we would tie into the existing system, whether it be tying into a drainage structure that already exists, or whether it be us taking a drainage structure and replacing it with a larger drainage structure. But that's where we tie back into the system. It's just a matter of, we're not sure yet where we want to do it. Do we want to do it in this catch basin where the WPA tile is supposed to connect? Do we want to go one structure over and just eliminate that area and get into the next structure, which might be more favorable? So we're just trying to figure out which is the best place. But the kind of the physical connection, if you were to see it, is a manhole.
Yeah, I think that area you're talking about is right.
It might be.
Either that or parents.
Yeah, it's.
I think it's yours.
I think
I think so too. From the maps, yeah.
Yeah, and there's two. There's one that's like. So if you know the detention basin on Northland Plaza, its outlet actually goes to the southeast. So kind of the bone shape that you had talked about, that little swoop at the southeast, it comes out that direction. That's the outlet from it. There is where the WPA tile supposedly connects. I mean, there's confirmation that there's an 18-inch diameter pipe coming into this catch basin. It's actually southwest of that, and then that pipe connects into that drainage structure and comes down. So I actually can show you guys that here in a minute.
There's above ground manholes too that go sort of from 161, past the old folks home or the 55 and older apartments and through the field to the end of Park Lane.
Yeah,
So,
and the challenge is some of those, like most of those, we can't. They're not the villages, so getting into them is difficult, or using them can be difficult.
I don't know where they go though.
So what are the next steps? So this is just a brief, this is in no particular order. These are just tasks that are remaining that we have to complete to finish this project. So the first one, which drives everything, is select the final alignment, proceed with the detailed design. So until we do that, we can't really go much further. So that's a conversation we are going to have with the village, and we'll determine what we're going to do. Then, as I mentioned earlier, coordinate with each parcel owner on site-specific issues and concerns. So going over with everyone the clearing and grubbing that will have to happen, tree removal, grading. Do you have existing structures that are affected by our potential project? I put this last bullet on here because I know this is a concern to some residents, that there are some depressions and some sinkholes. Our speculation is that they are probably caused by the non-functioning WPA tile that probably has openings in it that's basically just drawing material into it. We have had internal discussions about what we can do about those. I can't tell you exactly today because there's a number of options. If we knew we could do it, we would just fill that sewer full of a low-strength mortar, just pump the whole thing full of grout, and then go into each of those places, excavate it, put in good dirt, fill it back up, and plant it. Since we know we can't get a beacon past it, we can't get a camera past it, we can't pump grout past it. So what will probably happen is those will probably be things that we talk to each owner about. And I remember you two specifically the last time we talked about this, that we might have to come into your yard and just actually identify each of those and roll those into the project and get temporary easements to go outside of the easement and then have a line item in our bid for the contractor and basically just do spot fixes. Like basically just excavate down, hopefully find the pipe. If that is the pipe, you crack it open, you pump grout in both directions, fill the hole with grout. Now nothing can come there. Then you wait, set, then you backfill it, topsoil, grass. So that might be the solution. It's probably the easiest solution that we're going to have for these spot places. If this were like a big mine or something, like we would just do something more drastic. But that's probably what we're going to have to do. So that's something that's going to be in the detailed design. And that's another reason why we want to talk to each resident, because like we know that you two are affected by it, but other people might not be. So it's not worth like making that a condition of every easement. But again, then like I said, also then we can roll that into our contract and we get a bid price for it. And the nice thing is we get a per unit bid price for it. And so then if we missed one, we already know how much it costs. So I put that on there just to, in case you guys showed up, so you'd be like, I didn't forget about you. We have remembered about it. So that's something we want to coordinate. As I mentioned on the last slide, coordinating with the wildlife divisions on the bat survey requirements. They've been pretty responsive, so that's always helpful. Prepare and secure permanent and temporary, if needed, easements. Finalize the project funding, so that's something that we don't have a strong involvement in, but we generally assist with that. So like when the grant writer's preparing grants, we get involved with providing statements of useful life, statements of probable construction costs. So we do a little bit of work with that tangentially, but we have grant writers. I mean, our company has 55,000 people. We pretty much do a little bit of everything, but it's not, our grant writers aren't local. So we don't try to do that because it's not in the village's best interest. And then finalize the project, advertise and bid the project. So as I mentioned, our target is spring 2023. Not sure if we're going to get there. The engineering work is pretty easy, honestly. That's not the biggest challenge. That's not the critical path. It's once we figure out what we're going to do, it's actually putting a project together and bid documents together. It's a relatively efficient process. It's doing everything to allow us to build it is going to be the challenge. So, I mean, I've seen projects get delayed because of the bat survey. I've seen projects get delayed because of funding. And some of these funding sources have constraints to them. So we can't apply for an OPWC grant this year. They moved the program year up. So we couldn't take advantage of the program year. Usually the applications are due end of September, mid-September, the end of September. This year they were moved up by a couple months. I'm not sure why, but so we weren't able to participate this year. But let's say we could. Generally, you get notified in the spring that you get the money, but you can't reimburse for that money until July 1st. So depending on the size of the project, sometimes the village is able to proceed with the project because they can pay the contractor out of their own funding and then get reimbursed by OPWC and put it back into the village funds. Sometimes it works out that a contractor can't mobilize until July 1st anyway. Sometimes we start it so they'll get there, so their first draw, they can get on site, but their first draw isn't until late July, which means we take a couple of weeks to approve it, and then all of a sudden it's July 1st. So, I mean, we can do some stuff around it, but pretty much everything other than the engineering work is what's going to drive this schedule. So the target is spring 2020. So with that, we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Questions and answers period. So,
question about like the sump pump. Do any sump pumps go into this drain?
we do not know if any currently do because we don't have any, we can't get a camera down there to see. It would not surprise me if some sump pumps go that direction.
I know mine goes that way, but I don't know what happens after it goes under.
If you don't see a surface discharge, it's either tying into that line or it could have just a below ground where it just kind of dumps into some gravel and just kind of filters. That's not the most common. are you,
What's that?
well, I was gonna ask a question about it, but, yeah, if you don't see a surface discharge, I think the safe assumption is that at one point, it probably did tie into it.
Okay, because that was my guess, is it went into that, so.
Yeah, if, this is a, this is kind of a debate amongst municipalities and amongst utility operators. I think most municipalities prefer that sump pumps discharge through the curb and gutter and into the street gutter. That way it's detached from all the sewers. But that's, I think, more common on newer construction when you can do it. Versus like, say, coming into your property and being like, okay, well now we're gonna route this. We're either gonna put a new hole in our basement or wherever out the front, or we're gonna somehow try to figure out how to go around the house and go to the curb and gutter and probably not have enough fall to get there because now you're going. So what we have done on these types of projects, and we just did this on the 2021 project over at East Shore Court, is there was a resident who had drainage that, to the best of our understanding, was at least one time tied into the village sewer system, storm sewer system. And so we put in a bid item for the contractor to reconnect those. And so we had the contractor identify the two connections and connect them, and we confirmed that they actually operated how they were supposed to. We intended to put a similar bid item in this project in case there were situations like that. The biggest challenge we're going to have is we might not even be technically working over that close to where it would go. And so those are some things that we'd probably have to coordinate with the village to figure out, okay, is this something we want to roll into the project? Is there a cost sharing opportunity between parcel owner and village to like split cost of investigation? You know, because sometimes if you can't find it, it's basically just taking an excavator and digging where you think it is. So I'll add it to my things to coordinate,
Okay.
but I think you have the right assumptions.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know it comes out of the back of the house and goes down, so, and I don't see it come up anywhere.
Yeah, we might
Two
do
sheds.
that.
Yours too. Does our,
Yeah,
one would, wouldn't it?
ours would, because ours
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 goes
doesn't
out
have.
that
The
way.
property starts with B, right?
Yeah.
I bet
Bell,
the ties there.
not. Okay. You good?
So, more questions. How permanent will the water be?
I bet it goes out there.
Like, how often will it be flowing in the trench?
I can't tell you the number of times, but a storm sewer is typically sized to handle, it's typically sized to carry what's called a 2-year storm, which means it's a storm that has the percentage of happening once every 2 years. It's basically, it happens, it has like a 90, I forget the exact percentage, but it has a recurrence interval of 2 years. That doesn't mean it only happens every 2 years. That's just the recurrence interval.
And I guess how fast would it
So,
get up?
well then, but then the sewers are also designed to not surcharge, meaning not pop out, for a 5-year storm. So a storm that's larger. What you would see, it's hard to say, but it wouldn't it's not like it would be a torrent, because the majority of the flow will stay in the pipe. But what will happen is you'll get some burping, basically. Like you'll get a storm that's just enough to fill the pipe and surcharge into the manhole, but not so much that like everything's surcharging and you get this river going down, and it'll just kind of burp out and then sit in the ground and then settle down.
Okay.
So I could get deeper into the numbers, but I think we said that this sewer would probably be carrying at its maximum capacity. I think it's 5 cubic feet per second, and I don't have the number in front of me, but 5 cubic feet per second is like 300 cubic feet or 300 cubic feet per minute. I mean, it's, I don't know, I can do the math, I can do the math for you.
Okay. And last question, I think Stacy said that it would have to be cut clear, like we can't have like growth or trees in the trench. Is that, and how far away would they have to stay from that?
Yeah, so what you would want is in the trench itself, we would just want it to be grassland. So you wouldn't want anything growing in it, because anything that grows in it impedes the carrying capacity of the trench. But it would be grassland. And the reason that it's, even though it's only currently 1 foot 3 inches deep by 2 feet wide, the reason it's 12 feet at the top is so that you can mow it. It's a very gentle slope, so you can actually take a push mower down there or a riding mower. We slope it so that it can be mowed. We could slope it steeper, but it's just a challenge to mow. So what we would educate the village and caution is that it just remained grass-lined. And we would recommend not growing anything in the trench itself. I would try to keep a clear area, maybe a couple feet at most. But I mean, let's face it, if weeds grow up in there, I would not prefer it. But I mean, it's not like it's going to be the end of the world. It's not like when we had trees on the earthen dam. Okay, that's like never do that. This would be like, you shouldn't do it, but let's not try to get overboard about it.
Are there any considerations for trash that get down the storm sewer on Cleveland Avenue, and are there like trash catchers or things like that so it doesn't end up in the swale behind people's houses?
We
'Cause I know
haven't.
we had that problem with the lake.
Yeah, and that's a different situation, primarily driven by the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, that sewer is much larger. We haven't put anything into this project yet. I mean, that's a detailed design. The biggest problem that we have is we can't control what's coming into our system. It's what's happening. The only thing that Minerva Park can control is what runs off of the Jordan Road properties. And I guess technically you can have conversations with the parcel owner of 5444 and 5454 Cleveland Avenue. But as far as what's happening across the street from the Ivywood apartments, what's coming in off of Cleveland Avenue, the village, we've had even recent conversations with the city of Columbus, and you get a commitment from them that they'll try their best to keep it clean and stop it from happening. But I mean, they're at a loss too, just because some of the stuff that comes over is from people that fill 96-gallon containers every week of just trash. So, I mean, we can look into it. The challenge with that is every catcher that you install just means your sewer has to be bigger because you're impeding the flow. But by having manholes more frequently, as of now, there's no way to clean that pipe. So the village is being very proactive. The village is now on a regular CCTV. So we have a cleaning and inspection program going. So the sewers are on pace to be cleaned every 7 years. We're doing 1/7
Now,
of
are
the
we
village.
talking storm or
Both.
sanitary?
Both.
Okay.
We have 2 CCTV programs to clean the sewers every 7 years, meaning roughly 1/7 of each system is being cleaned and inspected each year going forward. So we'll have people in there regularly. We'll have manholes, which now make it easier because that's a deposit place for stuff to happen. So we can actually get in and clean trash. That's just a maintenance thing. I don't want to say just a maintenance thing, but I mean, it's just a maintenance thing. And then worst case, eventually it gets caught on the riprap, the stone at the end of the East Shore Court project before it gets into the North Lake. It's a big, wide spot first. I mean, I was there this morning and there were Gatorade bottles and stuff down there. So, I mean,
There could be guys that were working there too.
nah, they haven't been there in 2 weeks. And
So,
it was,
they were there today, or
yeah,
somebody was.
it was them, but we saw it with them today.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Is there any value in knowing where the WPA tile is?
Well, there's always value in knowing where it is. What I can tell you is, so far, to the best of our abilities, using cleaning contractors, GPS pingers, and camera equipment, we've traced it as far as it can physically be traced without excavating.
What's the address that it goes to?
I don't know.
Well, we can talk about that later. Go ahead.
We've tried getting, drawing locations don't help me at all.
Yeah.
We've tried getting physical locations on that for 3 years now. We've attacked it from both directions, and we've traced it as far as they feel comfortable tracing it right now. Basically, their equipment stopped.
Is that?
So even if we locate, go ahead.
I was gonna say, would you expect to see a similar sort of trench to what you would install with that, where that WPA line is? Because you can, there is a trench,
It's that.
pronounced trench that ends between my property and the next one.
Yeah, that's been created over time. We actually would have loved to follow that, because it kind of, easy for me to say because it's not my backyard, but when the river is flowing, it's kind of a nice little, it has like a nice meander to it.
It ends right there, is the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's not a completely flowing river, it's a stop. But like we looked at potentially, could we utilize that alignment? Because it would just be a more natural look to it, and maybe there was something we could do to it. The problem with it is, every one of those little bends requires another drainage structure. And each drainage structure can cost upwards of $10,000. So it's like, well, okay, we could do it, but we might have to, councilperson Cost actually asked, like, could we reuse this? And we're like, we could, but as we were saying in field, like, we'd have to change direction there, and all of a sudden it was like, we just tripled the number of drainage structures. So we're like, we could, but it's another like $300,000 to do it. So, we'll go back here first.
3 questions. The first one is anywhere in the funding any sort of a taxation being considered? And I know you may not personally know this, but I just want to throw this out.
Can you repeat that question?
Is as part of funding this, is any form of taxation on the residents of Minerva Park being considered?
You mean any additional taxes?
Yes.
No.
I would say a couple things just to that. One, hopefully grant money. 2, when we were planning and doing 5-year forecasts as recently as last year, we were doing 5-year forecasts with somewhere in the neighborhood of $350,000 a year to debt services for the community center remodel and rebuild. Since that time, we managed to pass the TIF funding ordinance, and all the building, the rehabbing of this building is coming out of that TIF money, which was not in the 5-year forecast. That makes sense. So I guess what I'm going to say tentatively, and I'm not the fiscal officer, is there was money in the general fund that was going to spend on projects that is no longer projected to be spent on projects. And it wasn't a small amount of money, because it was like, what are we going to do with the lakes? What are we going to do with the building? How much can we borrow and pay off? So I would not at all see a need for that.
But I will add, like, as a surgeon, when you do an informed consent, you always have the option to do nothing. So that is part of an informed consent, where you can choose to, I mean, nobody recommends that ever, and nobody goes with it, but technically, you just leave it.
Yeah.
Probably not.
With the open system type thing, the depiction that you have is quite literally what's in our backyard right now. And I mean directly, the one neighbors that I'm intimately familiar with their backyard is, literally that is what it is. It is a ditch that is 12 and 15 feet wide. That is where the water goes. It works lovely. I understand it doesn't work lovely on other people's yard. I just wanted to understand where is the excess going to go? Because right now, it's low enough relative to my property that even when we get serious Manhattan-style lakefront property, it's nowhere near my grade, so it's not been a concern. When you talk about leveling stuff out and stuff like this, and I understand that the details aren't there, but I'm curious where this excess is going to go if this all gets leveled out. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around these, I'm gonna call them escape valves, I'm sorry, I don't speak the language.
No,
My
that's
fire
fine.
lanes, I don't speak engineering. Those escape valves, where is that water going to go?
So the first thing you have to remember is the primary source, the primary method of conveying this storm flow is not the trench.
Right.
It's the pipe.
Yeah.
So the trench only sees what the pipe can't handle. So it's the most massive storms. It's the larger storms. I can't remember which storm interval we modeled this to, but I think we modeled this to at least the 50-year storm, I think is what the combined capacity can handle. If there's a little bit, if we get a storm that exceeds the capacity of the entire system, then it depends on how we grade the yards.
Yeah.
So it could go a little bit into your yard if it doesn't now. It maybe goes the opposite direction. Maybe things are sloped a little bit one way versus the other. So we haven't cut a path through, so it's kind of hard to predict what would happen to it, but we're talking pretty significant storms that would force it to even leave the channel.
The last question I've got is, and I apologize to anyone whose yard is involved in this, the area that I understand to be the 2021 project, that the big earth moving equipment and stuff was in, I'm sorry, but is the rehab done on that? Is it?
They came in today
Okay,
and
'cause
reseeded
it. looked
it.
like bleak. And that,
Well, that's what happens with grass.
Yeah.
It rarely completely catches the first time. So
Oh,
they
no,
came.
the piles of garbage.
No, that's gone. That's all
Okay,
gone.
Fabulous.
Yeah. What happened? So they were substantially complete, meaning they've done all the major work. We asked them basically they with their schedule and us wanting to see things, asked them to basically pull off site for about a week because we wanted to see how everything worked because there's nothing for them to do. I mean, they could have cleared that trash and we wish they would have done that first. But they were keeping some of it there because they still had work to do.
Okay. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Completed or
So
if this is part
then
of
what
it.
happened was there was a catch basin on Park Lane Drive / Park Lane Court, depending which that got damaged. That was damaged. Truck that was bringing in their equipment curbed it, made the road a little wider, drove over the top of the catch pit or the curb inlet.
Yeah. Okay.
For whatever reason, that curb inlet wasn't like your typical curb inlet. It had this large precast concrete top to it. Well, as I mentioned earlier, those things aren't sitting on shelves. Things like that aren't sitting on shelves anymore like they used to. So there was a delay in getting it. So they anticipated being out here 2 weeks earlier than they were, and then there was a delay in getting it. They were on site today.
Okay.
They reseeded and restrawed the area, or they will restraw. I haven't gone out there, but I haven't gone out there this evening. But they reseeded it, and they're going to put new straw down to try to get another catch.
It's still a work in progress because
But the trash
the
trash has been removed. Yeah, the trash is removed. They've regraded that equipment entrance. They've reseeded it. We've put down new tops, or not new. Well, we did put topsoil down in a couple places. But they did.
That wasn't the
Yeah,
finished
they did.
product.
No, they did. And what we do in and this will happen similar on this project. You have what's called substantial completion, which is basically you get what needs to be finished for the project to work.
Right.
And then you have what's called final completion, which is everything is done.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, one of the main differences between substantial and final is restoration.
Right. Okay.
And it's a contractual. contractual difference that frees up a certain amount of money when they reach one point versus the other.
Right.
So,
Yeah, okay.
but yeah, that was definitely not the final product. And if that is, please, if that were to happen anywhere else, I would be ashamed.
Okay. I have been talking to the neighbors around us, and they're having a similar problem. But in the last 2 years, we've seen an increase in, like, the water, our backyard totally floods if there's a strong rain. Not just the torrential, but I mean a strong rain. And it floods so badly that it actually lingers up next to the house. And it's not just our yard, the one behind us, the one next to us. And anyway, there's 4 yards that I know of at least, and I don't know whether Stacy's. Are you getting water down by you at all?
I did regrade within that time period.
Okay.
I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but we've got 2 things going on. One of them, it seemed to have started maybe when the independent plumbing project was done up near Cleveland Avenue. But it also, there's, I believe, a swimming pool being built behind one of the houses
Where?
at the, what is Saeed putting in?
I thought that was a big patio.
On the court. Yeah.
Oh.
And so that might be also really interesting with your project because they are on the very northernmost part of the courtyard.
I've been in their backyard.
Okay, so I don't know whether that's changed, any of the grading or not,
What-
but it's
yeah.
significant, and I
What,
have
what I would,
videos for you.
what I would recommend is in a situation like that, I know you just did it verbally, I would bring that up to village administration because at first it might be an enforcement issue. Not an engineering issue, it might be an enforcement issue. I can't say that it is or not, but it could be an enforcement issue. So they may have to have a conversation depending on what the permits allowed, etc. I mean, it's not uncommon for permits to put in stipulations about controlling your runoff if like in this situation, they've basically, if it's the property that I think it is, there's a lot more hard ground than there was before someone cleared a bunch of dirt. So usually part of your building permit is to control that. But we'll take a look at it just to see. Sometimes people regrade and that throws things off. Sometimes people do projects and it throws things off. Sometimes people don't even know they do it and they just put in, they just put in like a wood pile. And then all of a sudden you didn't realize it, but that wood pile was the swale that went off your property.
Yeah.
So we'll be cognizant of that. But when we were out here after that massive rainstorm, I think it was your house that.
Is that?
Yeah.
I think it was your house. Randall and I came out here.
Yeah.
8 in the morning. We were here at 8 in the morning after that storm event. No water was flowing on Park Lane Drive at all, except from your sump pump.
Sump pump
Or your whatever was draining from your property through your conductor into the street.
That's a French drain.
So
Well, we have that, but that's also where our sump pump is, and that's also where the corner of the house where the water collects and hangs out.
that was the only water that was flowing. So basically, Randall and I put our foot down, coming down your street, and all the water that was going into that catch basin stopped. Like there wasn't anything coming from the Jordan Road side. And then we lifted our foot and it picked back up. And so anything that was flowing through that 24-inch pipe into the North Lake was coming from your property. And it was not an insignificant amount of water.
No.
I mean, it was enough that I sent an email message to
Right,
Councilperson
she
Cross, and I was like,
contacted me and
hey,
said,
you may
hey.
have a resident that has a problem. You should probably go out there and talk to them.
She did.
I have a question of, from what I've seen, all the construction and changes would take place on Jordan Road and none back on Park Lane Drive, Park Lane Court.
That is the current plan, yes.
And will that fix our, I mean, I have a proposal from Ohio Basement Authority for several $1,000s to put more drainage from our backyard to the street, which is not probably a wise thing to do without talking with you guys, but we get water in the basement, in the walls.
I guess my overarching comment would be, without knowing where that water is coming from, I can't say if this project would help it or not. I mean, if it's water that's primarily coming from this Jordan, you guys call it Jordan Lake? You should call it the Jordan River. I mean, it's right, it's right there. It's right there. It's asking to be called. If it's coming from that, then yes, but I'm pretty sure we've had this conversation before that was even a significant issue. So my suspicion is there's something else going on. If it's not a backup from the village's system, I'm not sure where else it could be coming from.
This is just in the last 2 years, this two completely separate issues from
Yeah.
what we were having before. That was
You gotta
fixed.
go out and look and see where it's coming from.
It comes from like over by the courtyard and down between our houses. So almost like if it came, you know, if you're coming straight down from Cleveland Avenue, or Cleveland Avenue, the tile that you're proposing, or and then our yards go off from that, and it seems to be coming from that direction.
I mean, if it's primarily caused by the Jordan River, then it could help.
So as long as it doesn't dump out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, but remember, we're not collecting this water and then just spilling it onto the ground. Like, it's tying into a sewer system that's going behind the East Shore Court property.
So, 2 more questions. So, first, is this a permanent solution?
Yes,
Okay, so it will last for 1,500 years or something?
it should.
Okay. And second, what if one person says no? Are we going to do like eminent domain, or what happens then?
I cannot speak to what the village would do with that. I would say that would really cause us some problems.
We'll just flood it all the way there and stop. I'm just kidding. Obviously, my yard is one of the ones that gets a lot too.
And the mayor doesn't, I do want to point this out.
Thank you.
The mayor does not need me in any way to defend her, but I would like, just for everyone, the mayor did just make a comment about her yard, but I will tell you that in any of our meetings about this project, she purposefully stays silent during our meetings as far as asking, recommending, anything. She takes the information, but she purposefully will always remind people, I'm not trying to influence anybody because of where I live. So I did want to point that out. She stays detached as much as she can and still make the right decisions. So
Well, she's
Thought that
just
was-
one of us.
thought that would be fair to say.
I have a question, kind of generally, the part that goes like kind of by the church, between the church parking lot and the rehab center,
Yes.
like drive area. I know that slope is already pretty steep, and based on what I've seen over the last 2 years living here, I've seen that area kind of sink a little bit. And so that slope in the back there has been getting steeper. Will this project at all affect any of the rehab centers, like, you know, their driveway or any of their property? And has that been talked about?
Our intent is to confine our grading to property within the village
Okay.
and on property that we can work with. There's some debate as to where, I don't want to say debate, but so as you can see,
Yeah.
the Minerva Park boundary, this building is in 2 municipalities.
Oh, okay.
So we will be coming through here and we will be doing work. Whether that means there's a betterment to their property, that's something that we'll have to coordinate with them. The intent is to not have to come in and, I mean, I don't want to be replacing people's parking lots for them just because we're nearby.
We have an easement with them?
No, you said there were no easements back there at all.
Well,
I don't think there's one with them either.
Wow, okay. Interesting.
Because they are actually Minerva Park, right?
Well,
and Columbus.
yeah, their building's in both places.
Oh.
Their building is physically in both places.
Yeah, because you can see the dotted line.
Here's the
where it
Minerva
goes-
Park boundary right here.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
So the
Yeah.
54, 54, whichever the
Yeah.
one with the drainage issue is also the Minerva Park.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is why the village is working with them to take ownership of that sewer.
Quick question regarding that. How can you put that in? How can you put it on other people? How can you just bust into that and pour it onto somebody else's property? I thought moving water onto another person was illegal.
I am not legal counsel. I can tell you that legal counsel in the village have had multiple conversations with those property owners.
This is where it starts.
And I will leave it at that.
Yeah, because this is where it started. And it seems to me they're getting out scot-free. They caused it, and now they didn't take responsibility for it. They still aren't taking responsibility. And now we have to absorb that piece of illegal drain in order to make this project work.
Well, didn't their need to do that kind of stem out of a problem that already existed that the one we're trying to solve here?
Well, this line right here where this line ends, I think now you can see my pointer, right?
Yeah.
Where this line ends, this is as far as we've been able to ping the WPA tile.
Can somebody tell me who owns the property where it stops?
That would be Eddie and Bill over there.
Yeah, that's the.
You, okay.
3 down from the church.
Yep.
On the 2 sheds.
So it went right between the two sheds and then stops.
So right past my property on the next one, there's like some concrete that's starting to come out of the ground. Is that the drain or what is that?
Could be the pipe. Could be a structure. Take a look at it. I think I saw
Yeah,
it.
there's like 2 or 3, like they almost look like big cinder blocks.
Like they
that
were
are starting-
busted up a little bit, right?
They're starting to come out. Let's see if I can.
You looked at it.
I think we looked at them and we were trying to speculate what it was.
Because it wasn't clay pipe, so you were like, that's not like.
So yeah, so I'm not sure. We could,
Okay.
but it could be. So
Hey, what is going on in your house?
so this is as far this
No, I'm serious. What is going on?
this is as far as we've been able to trace this line thus far. So going back to your question is we can't confirm, we can't really get water through this line. Because we only have Minerva Park stuff shown, there is a drainage structure that's right in this area. And then there's a drainage structure like right in this area. So the one over here is the one that Columbus and us believe the WPA tile ties into that line.
That sounds right. That's consistent with the end of the trench.
So that's what I was mentioning earlier, that on our second annual attempt, we actually were able to get dye through this line. It took 3 hours to get from here to here. And it should take like probably 15 minutes. Problem number 1 is that drainage structure was buried under 3 feet of ground.
Yeah.
So no one even knew it was there.
I think I was there when they discovered it.
So then we found it like last summer, and that's when we were able to get dye through.
See, and I think from there on, it actually drains.
Yeah, because from there
'Cause
on,
I don't build up in my yard
Yeah,
back
from-
there. I build up in front, but I don't build up back there.
from there on, it connects to the Columbus system that runs like
It's
in
working
here.
there, yeah.
And then we know that works because we stood out at the end of this East Shore Court project right here and watched water come out of it. So we know that's working. We know that the detention basin at a minimum is working. So anything that's getting into that storm sewer or that catch basin that's by your property, and then anything coming out of the Northland Plaza, that drains properly. It's getting it from here to there. So we know that there's a problem
By those sheds.
in this area. Yeah, it's probably the sheds. Like they built the foundation and went through it. Probably. No, those are shallow foundation sheds, guys. But we also know that there's a problem right here. So this is the problem that you're mentioning. It's legal counsel's determination that this sewer here is privately owned. So it would be on this property owner to repair it.
And there is still discussion going on about it. This is public record and the attorney is still involved in all of this. The only comment that I'm gonna make is continually going the same route that we've been going, which is in a circle for however many years, is affecting everybody in this room. And at some point, whether or not there's something that happens after the project, during the project or anything, we have got to continue to move forward because we're the ones suffering.
Right.
Because of that, we all know, I don't care about the public record when it comes to this. I think most people know exactly what happened. The attorneys, again, we have spent a lot of money on attorneys. They have been talking about this. I have emails back from 2014, 2015, all in the exact same topic. And again, it has gone in circles. And that's what a lot of, I don't want to say this, but that's what a lot of attorneys do, just continue to until you get fed up, until you do something about it
Until you
yourself.
run out of money.
Or until you run out of money. So everybody in this room has lost, you're gonna continue to lose property value. We're all in the same boat. I'm not interested in wasting village money. I'm not interested in spending village money when it's not our problem. The attorneys are involved. He is correct. He is not the attorney. But I will tell you that we are still in discussion in a lot of different avenues, but we should not be suffering while that continues to have that conversation. So I just kind of want to say that without saying too much, because again, this is past my level. This is in the attorney's hands.
Okay, thank you.
So, but no, you're not wrong.
Just quickly before the question, I just did want to point out, based on what we were able to determine, here's the drainage structure that we uncovered.
Yeah.
That was buried under about, you can see, 1 foot to 2 feet of dirt.
How many houses down from the church?
I like what she said.
I was surprised.
How many houses down from the church? That's how I do everything.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. We're already trying to figure out how many houses are down from the church.
Here's the church right here.
Yeah.
So it's like 1, 2, 3, maybe 5, 7.
No, because I'm 5.
We're 6.
Yeah, there's 6.
Are you trying to figure out where the last drain was?
Yeah, how many?
Is it Sammy's place
It's
or?
behind Jeff Johnson. Jeff and Jimmy Johnson. Next to me. 2 down from the end.
Okay.
Okay.
And then this is what I was saying, that this,
Sammy, then Jeff Johnson.
this is the Northland Plaza detention basin, so you can see all their stuff. Their storm sewer comes in, it has a leg here, it has this very long leg here. It discharges this direction. And then this catch basin connects to that, and then all of this flow comes down and it's chopped off, but it connects to this sewer, which then comes down into Minerva Park and comes to the head of the North Lake. So,
I was just gonna add, we've been throwing around terms like WPA. That's the Works Progress Administration under FDR. And it was a make-work project to employ people who are unemployed. There were no easements granted, and if you look at the county map, they have a bunch of question marks, and they have some sections of the pipe labeled as, 18 inches? And some with big question marks on 15 inches, and no easements anywhere. So
There was
That's,
nothing.
that's the problem.
There was nothing back there.
It's old.
I mean, this used to be one massive parcel, and then it got divided into 10 parcels, I think, and then it further was subdivided.
If you go in the time frame, the house after me, Anastasia's parents owned, is the last of the older houses in Jordan, and that's consistent with where the WPA is. So that makes sense.
It was Bill's gas line. The original,
And
we
maybe so
sold
Mary
at our
Bell
property,
sold that extra parcel to
the,
Ida, I think.
on the other side of the ditch that we already had. The gas line runs through there.
Well,
And
yeah, but she sold
I've
the other side.
actively watched, the gas line guy walks it like 2-3 times a year. He was thrilled when Dad cleared all the junk out between the pine trees. You just haven't mentioned it in any of this. I didn't know if that coordination was just so automatic that
I'm assuming that's what.
Yeah,
you're
what we,
proverbially rolling your eyes at me right now.
No.
Or if maybe it dips into that property and it's not on the map, because a lot of stuff wasn't on the map, so I just.
yeah,
wanted to-
I did not put any of that information on the map
Okay.
because I didn't want to clutter it.
Yeah.
What we do, just so everyone is aware, when we get the survey,
Uh-huh.
the surveyor contacts all the utilities. He's required by law to
Okay,
contact the
and they'll flag it out.
utilities. Dials 811, puts in a service ticket. I mean,
Yeah.
we do the same thing.
Yeah, no, I know.
So you put in a service ticket, you draw a big box around the area, you say, we are going to do work out here.
Yeah, okay.
And then they come out, when it's survey information, they'll come out, they'll flag it, and then they'll send the documentation to the surveyor. So they'll give us GIS, they'll give us as-built drawings, or whatever.
Yeah.
Then, in detailed design, we send our plans out to them again,
Okay.
and we say, here's what we're proposing to do,
Yeah.
clear it for us. And then they say, yep, no conflicts, or hey, there is a conflict, let's talk about it. And then when we identify a conflict, we will either adjust our stuff if we can, or sometimes they either have a project already in the works that they'll adjust it, or sometimes they're like, oh, that's a spot adjustment, we'll take care of it, or it's a spot adjustment, can you put it on the project?
Right, call us
And
in the day
then,
you're doing.
and then the owner and the utility owner will work out an agreement cost-wise. So it will be coordinated.
Okay. I mean, I don't think it affects my house per se, but it does, that steep part that leads up to the fence there, it definitely runs on our side of
Yeah.
it. I mean, I guess is the.
And then the contractor, he has to do it all again before he goes out to bid. So we get multiple cracks at it.
Mike, an extra question. You mentioned the Huntington property also.
This is everyone.
goes in there.
It actually goes into Northland Plaza.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
Eventually it comes into Northland.
Do they still
Yeah,
have
we
the
might
detention
actually.
ponds?
Yes.
Okay, because when they built everything, it was all hands off, you couldn't get in there.
Yep, they still have it.
Yes.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, I'm gonna give him a couple more minutes and if anybody has a couple more final questions, it's 8:15, I'm sure he would like to end his day. Before we do that though, I also want to point out that if you guys are not on the text blast and you guys are not getting the emails, you guys might all really want to consider it. If anybody was on here, they know that we sent out a reminder for this meeting. We will be sending, it was also emailed out to everybody as well as, we try to do every single form of communication. So if there is anybody that is not on both of these, please come see me, take these and get this done because we will be communicating every avenue that we possibly can on the next one of these particular ones, including dropping off a flyer. Like he said, we will be trying to do this again as soon as we move a little forward.
Bring this to the block party.
Yes, and then we'll bring them there as well, because there's people that are not here. Mike and I communicate all the time. Stacy and Mike communicate all the time. So if you guys have additional questions or you just aren't comfortable asking your questions right now, don't hesitate to email myself or Stacy. we can get him all of the information. If you are concerned about your backyard, and again, I don't wanna put anybody on the spot, but like Eddie said, if there's somebody that is really against this, I mean, now would be a great time to find this out. No, I'm not asking. But send myself an email, send Stacy an email, and just kind of let us know, this is what's going on, this is what I'm concerned about. And let us work through it now before we get to the point of doing the project, and then, then we find out that this is an issue. Again, not everybody's here, so it may not be one of you guys, but we just wanna make sure that we're communicating as much as we possibly can on this particular project. It's been a long time coming for a lot of us that have been dealing with it, and it's just gotten worse over the years. So we'll go around just one more time. If anybody has any really specific questions, this won't be your last opportunity. Again, don't hesitate to send emails to us, and we will get the answers. Does anybody have any final?
Just, I know that they're gonna be doing grubbing and
Yes.
that's gonna tear down a bunch of the brush line that's along the back of some of our properties.
I'm letting mine grow just so they can clean it all out. No, I'm kidding.
I just saved you $6
We
grand
just
because we
spent
just
it
did
all.
ours.
We just did it.
Oh.
Yeah.
The only problem is the lights from Northern Plaza now are in our windows.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we're letting ours grow, because it's actually blocking more, so you understand that. Go ahead.
I don't wanna see a big fence all along the back line of the property. Cause I mean, the deer use that path.
Right, that's it.
So is there gonna be any allotment for putting up some kind of vegetation there?
That's a great question, and that's something that we can talk about, and you have some of council that is still here, and that's something that we can definitely talk about doing. I'll skip my yard so I don't get in trouble for putting nice pretty trees in mine, so I'll make sure you guys get the extra for that. No, I'm teasing.
And there
I'll
are-
make sure they get it all. Your guys have all died because of it.
And just for everyone's, benefit, there are recommended, the city of Columbus, we follow their standards a lot, because the village has agreements with the city for storm sewer and water, so we use their standards a lot. They have a tree replacement policy, so we use that as our base, and then we coordinate that with the village, and it's basically for every tree that you take down based on a certain diameter, it's recommended that you replace it with this many trees of similar species. So we use that as a guide. We actually we're working on we're getting ready to start finalizing what we might do over at the East Shore Court properties, because we didn't have that in the contract documents. But we have landscape architects that are Ohio-based, so we deal with a lot of our own landscape architects that are good at recommending proper tree species for things like that. So
We don't have a question, but we have an announcement.
Yeah, I'm David Hart. You may not know me, but you all know Rose.
Yes.
And you should have gotten a flyer sometime this week or late last week in your mailbox. So we're hosting a block party on Sunday from 3 until 8. We have we're the house with the huge garage. So we'll be outside if weather permits, we'll be in the garage if not, and please, we'll have food and look at the flyer.
No sewer talk.
No
sewer talk. That's my only rule. No, I'm teasing. Totally teasing.
No sewer talk.
All right, does anybody have any more questions related to your backyard, what it's gonna do, anything like that? What we'll do is we'll get with Mike, we'll look at all the different options, he will weigh, obviously the trees, what we would lose, sheds, which project is going to benefit the village in one aspect or another. We're not gonna look at it just as a cost point. We will look at it in multiple different avenues, and I shouldn't say we, but they will, as well, so. We'll talk to him over the next few days. I do plan on having the grant writer legislation, so we can actually hire him to move forward in front of council next Thursday. So that is one of the next steps. So make sure you talk to your council and tell them that you want this moving along. So that will be there. The only other thing that I wanted to make sure, this isn't really for you guys, but I know you guys are ready to go. Just look at the information for the CCTV for the legislation that I put on for the storm and sanitary sewer for the next.
It's not this week, it's next week, right?
We're not gonna be here tomorrow again. Yes, we will, legislation. If you guys have any questions, just let Mike know at the end of this for that. The only thing I was gonna tell you is I don't have street names for the CCTV, which I do like to put on there.
Okay.
And only because I don't remember, I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember where we're even at this point. What the next, I think one of them has it, but not the other one. So I don't know if they're both in the Jordan Road area. So that's what I was gonna, cause somebody's gonna ask that. So for the next CCTV round that we're getting ready to vote on, I just wanted to see if we could add some street names of which sections those were, and you can do that tomorrow. So other than that, last chance for a question. My email is mayor@minervapark.org. Send me an email, but if you do not get a response from me or admin, our emails are still not working. So depending on where your email is from, we can't send an email to you. The Roots, I cannot respond to you. I get kicked back. So we have actually tried multiple times. I think I ended up sending you one from my personal email, which I don't like to do. But if I really need to get a hold of you and I can't get it to go through, that may be the case that I'll just send it from a personal. Yes, I just put that on a public record, but that is our only way. And there's only a couple that we're getting kicked back. Like Hotmail, I think will not go through. There's a couple that just will not go. So just as an FYI, if you send the village something to do with WOW and BreezeLine, I'm not the techie person, but it has to do with IP addresses and it will not work. We're in the process of redoing everything with Spectrum. But it is what it is. It's been going on for about 2 to 3 months now, since we got BreezeLine. So we know it's not working, but you can't switch companies that fast in a government.
Stop trying to hack our system out there.
I know, something.
It happened, in fairness, it happened to mine too. Like there were some stretches where I was like, I'm not getting any response.
No.
What did I write?
So, and some will go through at Franklin County and some won't. Like I'll send an email and then it'll all just go in their junk mail. Everything goes in their junk mail. So then it's like, so you find yourself calling after you do everything a lot of times. So it is what it is. So if you do send an email and you don't get a response back right away, pick up the phone, call, or send another email and I'll just respond from a different email address just to let you know I did get it.
Thank you.